the show where we count things down from number 5 all the way to number 1. Now, if you remember last time on the show, I said when we did our top 5 movies 2005 to 2010 that I could make an entire top 5 list just on movies that came out in 2005. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is indeed what we are doing this week. Top 5 movies of 2005. A little heads up, you probably already know what my number 1 is, considering it made last week's list or the last episode's list.
It was huge.
But I am going to start with my number 5, and it is Sin City. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Sin City. I don't know why people don't like Sin City. I don't know if it's a Frank Miller thing. I don't know if it's a Robert Rodriguez thing or whatever that it is. But for what it is, Sin City was a very good adaptation of the source material, all the way down to trying to copy the comic book aesthetic that Frank Miller created for the Dark Horse comic series to bring that to life in on the screen. And I think it did incredibly well. In fact, it may have created a lot of people who wanted to create lookalikes. Certainly, depending on which story you like, whether that be that Yellow Bastard or the Frank story or whatever that you have going on, the number of actors that they got into that series is incredible. I think the stories are very well paced. And I thought that this movie was maybe going to be a little bit too gory for my wife when it came out. But we saw it on a weekend. We were out of town and we went to a theater and we saw it. We came out and she's like, I really like that movie. And so that's something very rare for her to say. I think the last time she said she really liked a movie was the very first Wonder Woman movie. So the compliments from her are few and far between, as I do know personally myself. But number 5, Sin City from the year 2005. Matthew?
I don't know. I hate Sin City for a couple of reasons.
Why?
Partly it's the Miller connection. Partly it's that it is gleefully like just brutally bleak and grim and horrifying to the point where
you mean a very good
contrived
adaptation of the source material.
Well, you know what? I hate the source material too. So yeah, it's a perfect adaptation of the source material,
see?
and it crushes my soul and it fills me with hate. But a movie that uncrushes my soul, a movie that I love, a movie that actually I think wasn't last week that we kept having a discussion about how Mary Elizabeth Fribble-Frabble keeps showing up in all of these movies, and she's been playing a teenager for like 37 years.
No, we didn't talk about that.
Oh, okay. Well, so Mary Elizabeth Winstead was a teenager for like 35 years. She's been the Huntress. She's been the Scott Pilgrim lady. She's been a lot of people. But in 2005, she was Royal Pain in a movie called Sky High, or as I like to call it, the first time I read it, PS 238.
That almost made my list because it is such a just very much like Sin City embracing its source material. Sky High embraces the silliness of a genre where you have legacy and sidekick superheroes.
Sky High, I think, embraces not just the silliness, but it embraces the perception of silliness where maybe there isn't any. The whole scene with sidekick and all of that. A lot of people's current, 20 years down the line, snottiness about sidekick kind of comes from there. It's just like whenever you mention a cape, someone has to yell no capes, like Edna Mode knows anything about superheroes. But Sky High is really fun because it has that, that standard thing of, the kid who wants to live up to his family's, big high ideals, but, no, he doesn't have any superpowers. And his dad's the greatest superpower ever. It's the closest we're ever going to get to Superman, Kurt Russell, which, Kurt Russell's like, I think 75 now. So that's probably good. But it features Killer Frost, except she wasn't an ice elemental. She was a plant elemental. Features Mary Elizabeth Winstead. It actually has a Kids in the Hall in it, which actually, there may be 2. I can't remember. But there is a Kids in the Hall in it. Of course, Kevin Heffernan, who I probably know best as Farva from the Super Troopers is in it. Really, there are no forgettable characters, even though there are characters who are silly, characters who are meant to be parodies of other things, characters who, honestly, if I were writing a superhero story, I would be like, maybe I'm insulted by this. But it's also really fun. And it has, the goofy Disney ending. And I think it holds together really well, at least well enough to be my number 5. Has a lot of Bowling for Soup in it. And I know you like the Bowling for Soup.
Yeah, Bowling for Soup is great. Yeah, no, Sky High is great. I really almost put that on my list. I would put that in my probably 6th or 7th slot on this just because it is so fun. And I think I've only seen it like 2 times. Once when it originally aired on, or I guess, well, it was in the theaters, but when it originally aired on Disney, when my kids were totally into Disney stuff, it was good times. It was good times to watch that. And I saw, hey, they're using those tropes correctly, but tongue in cheek. And it just worked out very, very well. If people are wanting to get a good comparison, you might think of a school for kids that have magical powers. This is the equivalent for kids that have superpowers. Unfortunately, Disney did not see the light and say, hey, perhaps we could make a 15-year franchise out of this. And they just released the one movie. So there you go.
Nobody thought there was such a thing as a 15-year franchise in 2005. They thought it was Star Wars and others.
The Star Wars, a borderline 30-year franchise by the time 2005 comes around. But we are on to our number 4s right now. And my number 4 is Old Boy, which is a adaptation of the Japanese manga of the same name. And I know what you're thinking, people who are snooty heads. But that film came out in 2003, Stephen. That's correct. It came out in 2003 in South Korea. Didn't come into the United States until 2005, and that's where it got its greatest attention. The story of Old Boy is a story about a man who gets drunk one night and he wakes up in a basically a hotel room apartment. He is not allowed to leave, and he is being held captive for 15 years. He doesn't know the identity of his captors. He loses basically all self-identity, and when he is finally released / escapes, the movie turns into, 120 minutes of revenge, thriller, violence. It's got a great fight scene. If you are someone who loves the Netflix Daredevil season 1, where Daredevil goes down the hallway and just beats the crap out of a bunch of people, you can go to Old Boy and you can see not the tracking, or the trucking shot of that fight. You can actually see the tracking shot of that fight as the lead actor / character is running down the hallway, just beating the crap out of a billion people. And then, of course, you should be aware that the ending is really weird. It's really bizarre. And there's some sexual stuff that will probably be a turnoff to many people. But that's kind of the point of the revenge part of the story. If you can stomach that part, and it's a pretty big twist, then I would suggest you check out the American released version of Old Boy. That's my number 4.
I've never seen that one. I've read
it's pretty
several
intense.
chapters of the manga, but yeah.
It's pretty intense, and the ending is pretty shocking. And I think it's probably the thing that turns me off about the movie, just when you get to that point and the reveal happens and you're like, holy crap, this is gross and disgusting. But then you're just like, yeah, but the journey and everything that this person has went through kind of makes sense, ? And then I also realized that I like Chinatown. I don't know if that means something or not, but Old Boy is definitely something that you have to go in with a mindset that you might be grossed out at the end. So there you go. Okay, Matthew, what do you have for your number 4?
My number 4 is also, I feel, a botched shot at what could have been a 15 or 20,000 year franchise. However, I don't think it was a Disney joint. I want to say, well, Buena Vista, is that
Disney?
A Disney
Buena
joint?
Vista is the distribution arm of Disney.
Okay. So Touchstone Pictures, yeah, it is.
Touchstone Pictures is a Disney offshoot.
It is a movie that is filled with the zeitgeist. It's filled with the hottest people of 2005, and also John Malkovich. It's filled with all sorts of entertaining cameos and wonderful actors. And of course, it actually has a cameo from the most important actor of them all. And that, of course, would be Simon Jones. Simon Jones, of course, was the original voice of Arthur Dent, who is, in fact, the main character of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In this case, played by Martin Bilbo Baggins, with the assistance of Yassine Bey, the artist formerly known as Mos Def, as one of my favorite Ford prefects in the history of live action Ford prefects, all four of them. But it also features a weird turn from John Malkovich. If you know your Hitchhiker's lore, you know that every time the story gets adapted, Douglas threw in a little extra. So the radio plays were not exactly the book. The television show was not exactly the radio play. The later radio series that sort of came off of the television show was neither the previous radio series nor the television show. And by the time we get to the movie, we actually have a whole new chunk of character. And of course, that character allows us to deal with a couple of big problems. One, Zaphod Beeblebrox has 2 heads and 3 arms, which is darn near impossible to do on film. And 2, there's no particular rhyme or reason behind his abdication of the presidency to steal the Starship Heart of Gold. This fixes that. It gives us everybody you know from Harry Potter. That's very important because they're all in here and they're all playing somebody else. And as you go through it, it very much feels like the newest iteration of the story. It feels like Hitchhiker's Guide for the 2000s, which is, I think, part of the reason why it failed at the box office, because people wanted what they knew. People wanted an adaptation like Sin City, which gave us exactly what we knew so that we knew and loved it. This didn't do that. I really enjoy it. And I feel like there are a couple of just hilarious moments in here that you don't get in any other Hitchhiker story. And most importantly, do you remember the television series from the 80s?
Of course. And also, just slight correction. It goes radio, books, TV, movie.
My bad.
Not book, radio, TV, movie.
Right. Okay. Well, I like the books. So
yeah, no, the books are great.
So here's the thing.
Here's the book. Everything is great. Everything Hitchhikers except for this movie has been very well received by everyone.
Yes. The comic book adaptation by DC had a Ford prefect.
So that's the other thing. It's the comic book adaptation of this movie.
The comic book adaptation was actually an adaptation back in the 90s.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Which kind of took, the Ford prefect from the TV show was kind of weird and goofy looking. And the Ford from the comic book took that and turned it into a weird clown. The thing about Ford was he's an alien who showed up on Earth and just fit in. Everybody just thought he was a weirdo. And Yassine Bey as Ford is just completely chill. He's like, hey, so the planet's going to explode. You need to drink these 6 beers and you need to drink them quickly. And you believe that he is actually an alien, especially when he meets Zaphod and they do their cousin dance, which I really appreciate. It's one of the movies that made me, I don't want to say love, it made me enjoy parsing the bizarre experience that is watching Sam Rockwell act. Because I've never had a Sam Rockwell movie that I haven't found fascinating to watch. Don't always like him. Sometimes I hate him. But boy, it's fun to see him do his stuff. And in this, he's basically doing Jack Black, which is great. Everybody, well, not everybody. I would say a majority of people are like, oh, I hated it. Maybe
a majority of people. Majority of people, yeah.
Yeah. 60% of the people are like, well, this sucks. But if you really sit down and you give it a chance and you say to yourself, and this is important to say to yourself, this doesn't negate the experience of listening to the radio play, reading the book, watching the TV show. It all still exists. There is nothing about this that ruins your childhood. And this was my childhood. Plus, Bill Nye as Slarta Bart Fast just kills me.
Yeah.
He's just so deadpan. So, if you've never seen it, I feel like you owe it to yourself to check it out. It ends with a hook for a story that you can imagine that never happened, but probably should have, because wouldn't The Restaurant at the End of the Universe make for a really great movie?
I mean, it would. But the problem was that nobody went and saw this movie after the first weekend, and so they were like, "Yeah, that's the end of that." Yeah, I just don't. The whole the biggest problem is they made this big story swerve with the Vogons, and it was really not necessary at all for the story, because the whole point of the Vogons is that they are not the overarching enemy of the story. They're just bureaucrats, and they instead try to turn them into the big bads of the story. And really, the big bads are four dumb adventurers and Marvin the Paranoid Android. That's the whole thing, is that here are these people that just are bad for themselves. So yeah, there you go. That is Matthew's number 4. And now it's time to get to our number 3. My number 3, it was on my also rans from last time. It's Batman Begins. And it's interesting because Batman Begins really is this giant departure from what had come before, especially when, what was the last one? The Batman and Robin was the one previous.
Batman and Robin.
Yeah, which really didn't do a whole lot for the franchise back then. And so people were kind of done with Batman at that time. And then you get the guy that had done Memento, who comes in and says, "Oh yes, I would like to take a crack at the Batman." I don't know if Christopher Nolan is English or not. I think he is. And they give him this interesting story. They give a little bit more backstory on what Bruce Wayne was doing during his time away before he comes back to Gotham City. And instead of just being an over the top, Silver Age crazy villain kind of story, we end up with something that is probably a little bit more grounded in what we saw in Batman Year One, what we see in the crime underworld side of the Batman universe. And it did a really good job at doing what needed to be done. And that is to give people a reason to like Batman movies again. And it packed people in. And I think I went and saw this like 2 times in the movie theater when it came out. And I'm not someone who goes back and sees movies multiple times anymore. But I was really taken by this film when it really came out. And I think it deserves a spot for 2005 because it is one of the big blockbusters for the year. And it's Batman Begins from 2005. Matthew, what do you have for your number 3?
My number 3 is a film that I actually came to entirely by accident because I was not a fan of the television program that it came from until after that program was off the air. And of course, if you know anything about the television show Firefly, you know that the watchword, I think, is unmet potential. So when they said, hey, we're going to make it into a movie, and they released 2005's Serenity, directed by, it doesn't matter, featuring a whole bunch of really cool guys. Nathan Fillion, Alan Tudyk, Adam Baldwin is in this. The Terminator lady, Summer Glau. Chiwetel Ejiofor is in this, who later becomes Baron Mordo in the Marvel Universe. And I honestly think that this movie probably serves as exactly what they're saying. Hey, this guy should be Mordo. But it's picking up in this futuristic world where humanity has spread out into the cosmos, and because of all of the things that have happened, people have kind of settled into an older phase of life. So it does give you kind of Western vibes in addition to your whole outer space thing. It's more Star Warsy than Star Trek, but it's Star Wars cowboys, which, cowboys are usually a Star Trek thing in my head. And it really does show you kind of an entertaining take on what happens if the worst people to save the galaxy are accidentally tasked to save the galaxy? Now, there are a couple of things about this movie that are frustrating because the original television program had 9 lead characters. And they made a point of saying we don't have a lead and a whole bunch of supporting. We have 9 lead characters. And the movie can't pull that off. They cannot do it. Um, I'm not saying that somebody dies. I'm not saying that somebody else dies, but somebody dies. And as the film unfolds, it feels like not everybody gets the same level of attention. That said, the attention that is given is amazing. And they do manage to stick in a whole new character, which I'm totally down for as long as that character is played by David Krumholtz, who improves everything he's ever been in. But going through this film as kind of a capstone to I think it's only 13 episodes of Firefly.
Yeah, but they didn't all air. That's the thing.
Right. Well, by that time we'd all seen them. I mean, they were out on DVD.
Yeah, they were out on DVD, yeah.
Yep. But the way this movie unfolds really does kind of tell that unmet potential story in a fascinating way. It does make decisions that I'm not happy with, but it also makes decisions that I think everybody is happy with. And also, it does mute one important thing about the television show that used to drive me nuts. Jane is an idiot. Jane is an idiot. Jane is an opportunist. Jane is probably just a murderous jerkface. But in this movie, because everybody has a shared goal, having a guy who's a murderous jerkface on your side turns out to be a good thing. So I think there have been rumors of a sequel for 11,000 years. Never going to happen. Everybody in this movie is now in their 60s, with the exception of Summer Glau, who's like 43 or something. I don't know. I have no idea how old people are, but very, very good movie as far as science fiction that doesn't fit into a major ongoing universal paradigm. It may be one of my favorites. So if you eliminate everything that's tied to your Terminators, to your Star Treks, to your Star Warses, and you set them all up, Serenity is definitely going to be near the top of that pile. Even though it's unfortunate that the creator turned out to be something of a schmendrick, it's a good movie.
There you go. We are now into our number 2s. I think this one deserves to be on the list for no other reason than it was the 3rd installment of the 2nd trilogy that people had been anticipating for literally decades. I'm talking about Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. What is really fascinating about Revenge of the Sith is when I was a kid, this would have been either right before Empire Strikes Back came out or right after the movie came out. There was a book that I found in our library that was like the Art of Star Wars kind of book. And it was just filled with like behind the scenes photos and early sketches and concept drawings and all of this stuff that they were using to build up the first Star Wars movie. And in that, they had this really big widescreen painting of Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting on a lava planet. Right? Something that, was never mentioned in the first Star Wars movie, never mentioned in the second Star Wars movie. Maybe it was mentioned in some of the books that spun out of that. But I was always fascinated by this painting that was like, hey, we had this concept that Darth Vader and Obi-Wan would fight on this lava planet. And we actually get that in Revenge of the Sith. And I find that extremely fascinating. It is the final turn for Anakin Skywalker as he turns to the dark side and becomes Darth Vader. Spoiler alert, everybody, for somebody who hasn't seen a 20-year-old movie at this point. A lot of people really hate the prequels, episodes 1, 2, and 3, for whatever reason, because it was maybe too kiddie, or maybe it wasn't too many special effects, or whatever the reasons that people have. I actually didn't mind these movies when they came out. I actually like them for what they were, and that was aimed at a younger audience. Always has been, always will be, except for Andor, which is really an adult show, but that's beside the point. My favorite movie going, and this was for me when Episode 3 came out, was kind of like very close to peak movie going period for me. This was right before my first son was born. And so, I still had a lot of free time to come and go and do what I wanted. And this is one where if it's in the afternoon, if there's a 2:00 showing, when movie theaters used to do 2:00 showings, I would go 2:00 showing Friday afternoon, and I would sit in the front row, or really 3 rows back. And 2:00 in the afternoon on a Friday, when school is still technically, K through 12 is still in school, college is out, but people have already deserted the town and everyone else is working. That movie theater was empty. So besides me and maybe 6 other people, we got to watch this movie fairly exclusively, right? Whereas when the episodes 7, 8, 9 came out, episode 7, we tried to go to a midnight showing, and there was a line around the block to where we almost didn't get in. But this was, for me, peak movie going, where I could just go 10 minutes before a movie, have my pick of any seat in the house, and be able to sit down and enjoy a movie for my own amusement. So there's something about Star Wars Episode 3, and really a lot of movies that came out during this time, where I had that positive movie-going experience before AMC ruined it all. And then, of course, again, it's a good story to where if you do watch all 6 of the movies in a row, you do get to see that tragic character story, starting from young innocence to turning evil and then seeing the light. And it works out very, very well. If you are someone who is a Gen Xer, I'm going to guess you probably don't like the prequels. But you talk to my kids, who was kind of the primary audience for this, even though one of them hadn't been born yet. They love this stuff. In fact, my oldest son loves the prequels. My youngest son loves the final 3. He also loves Empire Strikes Back. So, give him a little bit of credit there. But Star Wars has been around for forever now at this point, and it's never going to end. This is one of those franchises that will never end. They may take an extendo break, but with all the Star Wars shows that keep coming out, with all the movies that keep being announced, this is a franchise that will last 100 years. And in 2076, people will be sitting down and going, oh yeah, 100 years ago, this movie changed the film industry. And I think that this film deserves a spot on the list. And it's my number 2, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Matthew, what do you have for your number 2?
My number 2 is kind of an anomaly for me, in that while I am aware of, and in some cases, really enamored of bits and pieces of this particular franchise, which did not get bobbled, did not fall apart as a 15-year franchise, although it did fall apart in the middle of it as a 40-year franchise. But it's a movie that I didn't actually expect to enjoy, because first off, it's a reboot, or a boot launch, or a launch boot, whatever you want to call it. And second of all, when I saw it, I was not necessarily a big fan of the Kamen Rider franchise, but 2005 gave us Kamen Rider the First, or Kamen Rider Zafusto. So you got that going for you. And this film basically takes the story of the original Kamen Rider from 1973, which is a young man who is
Just
captured
nuts.
by evil aliens and turned into a cyborg, who is also kind of a cricket cyborg.
Rides a motorcycle.
Puts him on a motorcycle. We got to have a motorcycle. And they want to use this young man. His name is Takeshi Hongo. They want to use him as an inhuman monster to destroy the human race. Basically, he's like a shock trooper. His job is to go and just bust things up, wreck towns, kill people, do all of these things. Unfortunately, the aliens did not wipe out Takeshi's humanity. And so he comes back
humanity.
to himself. Right? He comes back to himself and he says, oh man, I have to use my new powers for good, calls himself Kamen Rider 1. So they go back and they're like, oh, we're going to try it again. So they took a young man named Hayato Ichimonji, and Hayato, they put him in the same thing. And they're like, we're going to take away his humanity too. Ha 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 ha. Guess what happened?
They teamed up and they became a fighting team, a grasshopper and an ant.
Nope, a grasshopper and another grasshopper. Kamen Rider 1 and Kamen Rider 2, the dual riders. It's important that you know that the reason that there is a Kamen Rider 2 is because in 1973 there was no such thing as a suit actor. So the man who played Takeshi Hongo actually broke his legs while doing his own stunts.
Yeah.
And they had to bring in another guy to play another Kamen Rider. But 40 years down the line, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do something good with this. So he initially fights, then they team up, and then they blow everything up and everything explodes. And then you have two Kamen Riders. Now, the thing that you need to know, and in these days of everything has a multiverse, including apparently now the Lucky Charms mascot, everything has a multiverse. So you know that this is a different version of the Takeshi Hongo that we know. It's a different version, of Ichimonji Hayato. It's different people, right? And it actually did spawn a trilogy of sort of relaunched, rebooted takes on Kamen Rider. So we did get the second Kamen Rider, who is named Kamen Rider V3, because the one thing you need to know about tokusatsu live action Japanese television programs, they're not going to make a lick of sense. You just have to memorize things and hope that it sticks. And honestly, that's 40% of the fun for me. So if you've never seen it, I do recommend that you get the subtitled version, because the actor who plays Hongo screams and has a lot of fun with the role. And that's kind of cool. And if you've never seen a Kamen Rider, if you don't know anything about the Kamen Riders, this may be a good place. This is the vaunted jumping on point where you can go,
really, because
okay,
I just like starting with the very first episode. That stuff is nuts.
It is. And if you go back to that stuff, it's super nuts. And of course, Kamen Rider fights, monsters who are like tubes of acid and bowls of lemonade and whatever it is you've got. But if you don't know from your Kamen Riders, definitely check it out. If you love your Kamen Riders, check it out. But remember, this is not your father's Kamen Rider. Technically, it's your grandfather's Kamen Rider, because I'm old. And that's why it's my number 2.
We have reached the top of the charts for our top 5 movies of 2005. See, I told you that we could make an entire episode of nothing but great movies from 2005 and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. My number 1 has everything that you could hope for. It's got Batman. It's got Iron Man. It's got, I forget what the lead actress, her name is in this movie. But I talked about it last time. It's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. It's a Shane Black movie, and if you're familiar with Shane Black, he did the Lethal Weapon franchises. He wrote those. He was like the first screenwriter in Hollywood to make $1 million off of a screenplay. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, an American neo-noir black comedy that has Robert Downey Jr. Playing a criminal who, while escaping the police, walks into an audition where he is supposed to be playing a criminal, and he's such a believable in his performance that they hire him and fly him out to Hollywood, and they need to have him trained with a real detective played by Val Kilmer. The character's name is Gay Perry because Val Kilmer character is homosexual in the movie. And they get involved in a crazy heist, a murder, and so much more. And it's a good buddy movie. I don't know if I can't think of any buddy movies anymore. I mean, they tried. I really think if Marvel hadn't gotten rid of Captain America Chris Evans, that if they would have done it right, they could have done a really good buddy comedy movie, action movie with Falcon and Captain America. They almost did it, but it was woven in among all of these other movies, and it should have just been, hey, these two are going out and doing their thing. They probably come from opposite sides. Now, the bad thing is they were already friends to begin with. Good buddy movies have to have people from opposite sides of the tracks, where you have Val Kilmer in this case, who is a good, in parentheses or quotes, detective, and Robert Downey Jr., who is just a scumbag thief. And they have their differences, but they come together at the end. Same way. If you look at Lethal Weapon, it's the same way. Nice Guys is Shane Black's 2016 movie, just another brilliant buddy movie that people should check out. But I kind of wish Marvel could have done that with Captain America and somebody, Falcon. I don't know, but I think that would have been really cool to see in that kind of a world. Who else is in this? Corbin Burnson is the bad guy. I shouldn't spoil all of this just yet, but he's the bad guy. Michelle Monaghan is the female lead in this. She's great. I love her in this.
She's great in everything. She's the only watchable part of the movie Pixels.
And if people don't remember, Michelle Monaghan, if I'm not mistaken, she was in the first season of True Detective as
and the
as
last
Carlson's wife.
The last season of White Lotus that just finished airing.
Yeah. She's really good. Mission Impossible 3, she's in that. So if you have not seen Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, technically a Christmas movie, I would suggest you go check it out. It's very fun. It's one of those that it's worth a watch every year or two. It's probably time for me to watch this again. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, my number one movie from 2005. The 2005s, Matthew. What do you have for your number one movie of 2005?
Well, in the year 2005, a movie was made featuring one of my very favorite, maybe my very favorite comic book character, John Constantine. And that's why my number one is Rent.
Oh.
Rent by Jonathan Larson, based on a Broadway musical called Rent by Jonathan Larson. We talked about this, and honestly, I wasn't going to use it again, but I also thought,
it was on our. This was my argument for putting Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was my number one. It literally was on my top 5 movies from 2005 to 2010. So how could it not be my number one?
Exactly
on this list.
And
so
this is a film that really effectively does the whole thing where we take bits and pieces, or in this case, most of the story whole cloth from an opera from the 1800s and go, okay, how can we turn this into something different? So we take La Boheme and we turn it into this, I say modern, but it's basically 90s. So from 1989 to 1990, this is 1 year in the life of, I think it's 8 kids. And, if you see the movie, they're in their 30s. Just suspend your disbelief. We look at this stuff all the time. We're like, oh, look, it's Sir Ian McKellen. He's playing a German Nazi, even though he's British and like 47. These are things that we can look past. And so amazing songs, an amazing cast. There is no one in this movie who you can take your eyes off. Everyone is amazing. Tracy Toms is in this. She's amazing. Later, she ends up killing Stuntman Mike. Of course, the Queen from Frozen is in this. The Flash's stepfather is in this. Everybody you've ever met, ever. I think there's an alien in here. I don't know. And of course, Taye Diggs, who's just Taye Diggs. He's in everything. But it is an incredible series of performance. Is it perfectly directed? Maybe. I don't know. There are moments in here that if you've seen Rent on stage and you've seen Rent the movie, you know that it is a different experience, which is why, the old school Rent heads were so mean a couple of years ago when NBC did a live version of Rent. Do you remember this?
No,
they did it live
I know that NBC did a bunch of those live things. I just ignored them.
I happened to be on Twitter that night because I was working on something, and I kept seeing people being snotty about how, well, some of you have only ever seen the movie, and it shows. And I'm like, well, some of you suck. And that's pretty obvious. But it is really well done. I feel like it wraps up well. It's one of the things that turned my child into the musical freak that they are now, which, they just literally stopped doing Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I believe that they're doing The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals as a senior project next spring. So it is really good. And this is very important. Everybody's super pretty. So if you've ever gone to New York City and you said, man, what this really needs is some pretty people who can sing, boom, here's the movie for you. Rent, my number one. honestly, if this movie's on, I will watch it. I will sit and I will watch it all. And also worth noting, if you watch this movie and you listen to any song sung by Roger, Roger, of course, is played by the always, always amazing Adam Pascal. Just know that's all in my range, and I can rock every note of it, and you'll never get to see it.
All right. Now that the laughter has died down, we can say that wraps it up for this week's Top 5. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hey, do you have your list of top 5 movies from 2005? What you need to do is head over to the Major Spoilers Discord server. You can join the Discord server absolutely free. Slip into the Top 5 channel. Share your top 5 movies of 2005. Why? Because everybody loves a list. Top 5 is a production of Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC, and is produced by me, Steven Schleicher. If you have any suggestions or ideas for future Top 5 topics, make sure you head over to our Discord server. Share your thoughts there.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.